Good morning, Wabash. Good morning. This week, speaking in Pioneer Chapel, we have two special guests. The first is our Monon Bell that our football team won last weekend, giving its famed ring throughout campus this entire week. And secondly, we have Crawfordsville Mayor Todd Barton, class of 2000. A lifelong native of Montgomery County, Mayor Todd Barton graduated from Crawfordsville High School and also attended and graduated Wabash College. Graduating in 3 years, Mayor Barton worked full-time and raised a family while taking classes here. After serving 26 years as a firefighter and paramedic, Mayor Barton retired and became the mayor of Crawfordsville in 2012. As mayor of Crawfordsville, he has eliminated $20 million in debt and liabilities, led efforts to bring the wastewater program into compliance, addressed blight problems within the city, and achieved stellar community status, and will oversee the further transformation of Crawfordsville. Mayor Barton has 3 children, Adrian, Trey, and Allison. Giving his talk titled, Shrinking the Divide, A Listener's Guide, please welcome Mayor Todd Barton.
Good morning, Wabash. Oh yes, the bell is back. I love that sound, and I want to begin by thanking you for taking care of business last Saturday and returning the Monon Bell to its rightful home right here at Wabash in Crawfordsville. You know, giving a chapel talk is a special thing, but giving it with the Monon Bell sitting in front of you is even more special. And I can't help but think of the last time I gave a talk, it just happened to fall on Halloween. And in the front row, we had Dick Nixon, Ronald Reagan, Barack Obama, and the back row was all witches. So this is a little different today. You proved last Saturday once again that the Wabash always fights words are not just a catchy slogan. It is fact, and you proved that once again. I want to begin by thanking you for giving me the opportunity to participate in this important Wabash tradition. Wabash is indeed a unique place in a rapidly changing world. When I was first asked to speak this semester, I was quite honestly hesitant. I live in the political realm, and I was hesitant because our country has become so bitterly divided. The thought of dealing with the quagmire of issues surrounding that divide in such a short block of time seemed daunting. Daunting and, quite frankly, unnerving. It was not exactly something I could imagine fitting onto my plate of issues. But my hesitation only lasted a few moments. I didn't hesitate long because at Wabash we roll up our sleeves and accept the difficult challenges. And at Wabash we discuss the tough issues. We don't avoid them because they are uncomfortable, challenging, or time-consuming. We dig in and endeavor to strengthen our understanding. But I also chose to speak because I hold a set of core beliefs that drive my passion for making Crawfordsville a better place, Wabash a better place, and our world a better place. Make no mistake at all. My goal here today is not to espouse one ideology over another. Perhaps a rarity for a politician, I know that. No, my goal is that you leave here today with some things to ponder. You leave here today with some ideas to consider and the desire to internally analyze your own approach to the growing political divide in our country. You see, I am very passionate about public discourse and understand firsthand the necessity of good, open dialogue. It is absolutely critical at all levels of our democracy. There are some disturbing trends in our nation, disturbing trends in our ability to communicate, discuss, and ultimately compromise. And although these trends are disturbing, they represent a unique opportunity for those who are willing to invest their time in actually engaging in dialogue. And of course, those entering the world from Wabash are uniquely equipped to do just that. I am often asked my view regarding what is happening on the national political scene. And instead of jumping headfirst into the specific issues that are out there, I usually try to dig below the surface and dig down to the root cause of the deepening divide, getting people to think a little broader. Yes, of course, we could discuss specific issues all day long. Sure, we could discuss gun violence, immigration, health care, racial tensions, kneeling before NFL games, and on and on. But I strongly feel we need to step back and look at these issues in a larger context. To really analyze the growing divide that is in our country right now, we need to ask ourselves why. Why aren't we making headway in reaching some kind of consensus that will move us forward? Consensus that will begin to break this ugly cycle in which we find ourselves. An ugly cycle that is void of compromise. Because in reality, there is a growing flaw that is eroding our discourse and worsening the divide on those specific and important topics. Now, what I'm about to tell you, what I'm about to say is very important. Please listen and think about it, because I truly, truly believe this is the nexus of our inability to effectively discuss these important issues. In our country today, everyone wants to exercise their right to express themselves. And that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. And it's worth repeating. Everyone wants to exercise their right to express themselves. However, no one, or very, very few, want to exercise their responsibility to listen. Think about that. We are all very proud of our right to express ourselves. We cherish the First Amendment, as we should. It's a right we should never take for granted. But like all our rights, it's a right that is coupled with responsibility. It is coupled with the responsibility to listen to others as they exercise their right to express themselves. And it's not a right that applies to any of us exclusively. None of us exclusively as individuals, nor any group or movement exclusively. It applies to everyone, not just you or me. We have lost sight of the fact that it is a right predicated on others listening to us. And, here's the important part, us listening to them. Did you hear that? Take a deep breath. I'll repeat it. Us listening to them. Everyone assumes others are listening. We assume others are listening as we exercise our right to express ourselves. But we struggle. We struggle with the concept of listening when someone else is doing so. Yes, we have totally let that part of this escape us. If we don't agree with them, we are becoming increasingly likely to just tune them out. Think of the words of President John F. Kennedy when he said, quote, "Too often we enjoy the comfort of opinion without the discomfort of thought," end quote. Our avoidance of the discomfort of listening to differing views is a clear avoidance of the thought involved in actually considering the views of others. So it doesn't work. There is a fundamental breakdown. And out of frustration or desperation, those expressing themselves get louder and louder, more intrusive, more absurd, and in some cases, more dangerous. Which means, of course, people become even more likely to keep tuning them out. Now, if I was to stand up here today and yell at you, to yell and lecture you, to yell, lecture, and belittle you for not agreeing with every point I'm making, you would tune me out. You would tune me out and the message would be lost. Now, I know that sounds simple, but that is exactly what is happening today. And if we take an honest look at ourselves, many of us have done it. Now, if you doubt what I'm saying, I only ask that you spend some time thinking about elections over the last several years. Look at the manner in which issues have been presented, the manner in which people have responded, and assess the outcome for yourself. It truly is very simple. We need to listen to what others are saying. Listen to them whether we agree or not. And certainly, we shouldn't always agree. Here's the interesting part. When you listen, one of several things will happen. Either you will develop a better understanding of their view, seeing that their view has at least some merit to consider, or if that doesn't happen, and it shouldn't always happen, you will gain insight into why, even though it may be wrong, why they think the way they do, which is the first step to formulating your message in a way that gets through to them. If you want to be more successful in convincing someone of your viewpoint, listen to them. If you only listen, they will most likely provide you with the information you need to be more effective and persuasive in making your point. Or perhaps, even perhaps, as they attempt to make their point to you, their reasoning will fall flat on itself. Yes, as they are attempting to articulate their view, because you have given them the opportunity, they will begin to see the flaws that you see. But only because you have given them the latitude to try to convince you. I've seen this happen, and it is a powerful, powerful outcome. And when it does, gracefully, very gracefully, allow them to begin changing their stance in a manner that does not embarrass, belittle, or humiliate them. I spend a lot of time with people with whom I don't necessarily agree. In fact, sometimes people with whom I strongly disagree. Believe me, it's not always fun, but it is highly, highly effective. I've been able to make some good things happen because I listened to those on the other side of the table. And I was able to get inside their head, if you will. I could formulate an approach to bringing them closer to my view by, first of all, understanding their view. You notice I said understanding how they see it? I didn't say agreeing with how they see it. And the inability to recognize that difference, the difference between understanding and agreeing, trips many people up in our nation today. We've become trapped in a belief that you can't possibly try to see things from someone else's perspective if you don't agree with them. I work hard to understand the perspective of others, regardless of the fact that I don't agree with it. If you are unhappy with the political direction, one way or other, that the electorate is taking us, if you ever find yourself unhappy with the outcome of an election, please stop, pause, and think about my words today. And ask yourself, was I listening? Were we listening? Were you listening in a way that allowed you to present a message that others could contextualize? Because in the end, you didn't get your message across if the electorate went another way. Oftentimes, the message was presented in a manner to which they couldn't relate. Or perhaps, just perhaps, you ended up yelling and belittling them out of frustration. The bottom line is, you failed. And anytime you fail, anytime I fail, we must look at ourselves. A lesson Wabash teaches each of us in its own special way. We get so hung up trying to express our own views, we forget to listen to others, which means, in the end, it looks to them like we are only trying to force our views on them. And make no mistake at all, the American people, by their very nature, are resistant to having the views of others forced on them. I work in government. I can attest to that. Contrary to what you might be led to believe, no one's political views are infallible. No one's views are infallible because we all inherently see things through our own perspective, and only from our own perspective. If we never take the opportunity to listen to others, we will be forever limited to our ability to grasp someone else's perspective. Now, if you are sitting here today thinking your own views fit neatly inside a box or nicely under a particular label, you probably haven't taken the time to thoroughly consider the view of others as part of your internal analysis. Each and every one of us is complex. We have a complex set of views and beliefs derived from our various life experiences. We need to accept that about ourselves and others. I find myself intrigued by special interest groups all over the political spectrum that try in earnest to force people neatly into these ideological categories. There are many out there who don't want you to listen or attempt to understand other views. And again, they are across the political spectrum. Now, you would logically assume that the rapid advances in communications we are experiencing would greatly improve our ability to share information and interact with others to increase our exposure to differing views. Sadly, very sadly, that is not the case. In fact, it has allowed us to isolate our consumption of information to only that with which we find agreement. And social media and the internet, in my opinion, have only magnified the degradation of political discourse. The likelihood of people only consuming information from sources with whom they agree is rising exponentially. The specialized social media outlets, 24-hour news networks, and a host of narrowly focused websites all have one goal. They pull us in by telling us what we want to hear, then progressing to what they want us to hear. Unfortunately, people are becoming more susceptible to this and narrowing their intake of information in a manner that all but eliminates their consumption of differing views. This isolation only leads us down the road of believing that those on the other side are no good, to say the least, and possibly lead us to despise or maybe even hate them. When in fact, a good face-to-face conversation in which we listen to them would allow us to see them as our fellow man, with whom we might disagree on a few things, but with whom we most likely have much in common, and very likely someone we have misunderstood. This reminds me of a quote from President Ronald Reagan in which he stated, quote, "A lot of problems in the world would disappear if we talk to each other instead of about each other." end quote. Now, I am not proposing for a moment that everyone in this world is just misunderstood or that there aren't those with bad and, in some cases, horrid ideals. But I am saying that is the exception rather than the rule. So while everyone else solely wants to exercise their right to express themselves, please take a moment. Take a moment to fulfill your obligation to listen to them. You will benefit greatly. Surely you must be thinking by now, come on, we are all intelligent people. We are all well-informed. We consume much information. Of course we are listening to all sides of the various issues. But are you? Are you really? Please take time to analyze that yourself. Unfortunately, I see more and more people from all socioeconomic and educational backgrounds narrowing their consumption of information. Narrowing their consumption to only those items they find agreeable or palatable. I would strongly caution you not to consider yourself immune. Think about the issues on which you feel passionately and ask yourself, how much effort have you actually put into trying to understand why others feel differently? It's a fair question, and it's a good question to be asking ourselves. I know that when I ask people that question, I am usually met with a blank stare. And if I inquire about the last time they sat down with others who feel differently, the reaction ranges from that blank stare to a gasp to utterances I won't repeat. Now, I can't help but think of an event that took place here on campus just a few weeks ago, an event sponsored by Wabash Democracy and Public Discourse, during which the controversy surrounding Confederate monuments was discussed. It is accurate to say people participated who were passionate about the topic on both sides. And quite frankly, many of whom showed up ready to ardently argue their view, and maybe even in some cases ready for a fight. But what was interesting was at the conclusion of the event, an event in which each viewpoint could be expressed and expressed while others listened, at the conclusion, everyone I asked about how they felt about the evening had the same response. They thought it was very helpful and they appreciated it. They felt that way regardless of their stance on the issue itself. Why? Why did people who were passionately for or against these monuments agree the event was good? Because there was a dialogue, and they knew others were listening without them yelling. And that is exactly what we need more of in this country. I point all this out today because I think your generation is being provided with some very poor examples, and I fear we are on a rather slippery slope. And your generation will need to take the lead in reversing the disturbing trends and restore our ability to communicate, discuss, and ultimately compromise. I hope you thoughtfully consider my words, because you, as young Wabash men, preparing to enter the world, are indeed uniquely positioned. You are uniquely positioned with a skill set that prepares you to listen to others and to find common ground, ultimately to make a difference. I've challenged myself, and today I challenge each of you to look inward. As you fight for your beliefs, whatever they might be, to listen to differing views in doing so. Because at Wabash, we discuss the tough issues. We don't avoid them because they're uncomfortable, challenging, or time-consuming. No, we dig in. We dig in and endeavor to strengthen our understanding so we can lead effectively and we can make a difference. I hope I've left you with some things to ponder, some ideas to consider, and that you do, in fact, pause to consider your own approach to the political divide that exists in our country. Thank you for inviting me to speak today, and of course for hearing my thoughts with an open mind. Have a great day, everyone, and enjoy Thanksgiving break.